Just about to pour some beers for the tasting video. This is what happens when you have two little daughters. Oh look, I've got a wand. Ding! Look, it worked. Wow. Dodgy pour. Poured that a bit dodgy, but there you go. That's the first JEDI juice that I call the fail. Even though it's not a fail, it's still a nice beer. And this is the one I did the day after. So I did mention on the brew day video that I'd done one before, and it is uploaded, the full brew day of the failed ones uploaded on the Patreon. The colour there on the camera is a lot worse than it is in life. I don't know quite why, but it has darkened up a bit and it has cleared a bit more. It might be hard to see with the condensation, where the proper brew day video one is still very cloudy. This was kegged 3 or 4 days before this one. I did rush this one a little bit. So what happened, it was old malt. I found bugs in it later, what I had left. So there was bugs in it. And I transferred it on day one because I wanted to brew the Brewzilla. This was in my Firmzilla. And then I decided I was going to brew it again using, I bought some fresh malt, the proper malt. So this was also transferred from the Firmzilla into a regular fermenter. About 30 hours, I think it was, 24 hours into ferment. This also, besides the bad Pilsen malt I had, the wheat I don't think was crushed enough. My numbers were way down, and I added about 300 grams of light dry malt at pre-boil, and then at the end I still wanted to bump it up a little bit, and I found some Brew Enhancer, Munton's Brew Enhancer I think it is, and I added about 200 grams of that. So it's had about 500 grams of a dry malt on there. I think the Brew Enhancer's probably a bit of dextrose and stuff too, Where this one was the full Gladfield light lager malt and the Gladfield wheat malt. So you can see the obvious difference there. This has been nearly 2 weeks now in the keg. I just wanted to give it some time, and so this one's just a little bit longer. But as you can see, this one's held up, and this one looks like a legit Hop Nation beer. The original one was dry hopped a little bit different. I was experimenting, only did one single dry hop, but it was high Krausen, and I used a few different types of hops, sort of all leftovers. Now, one thing to mention about this beer, or any beer that you're dry hopping with, always try and use the freshest hops you can. It doesn't matter if they've been in your freezer, but you don't really want to be dry hopping with 3-year-old hops. It'll work, but if you want the best, you use the freshest. Now, they've both got a beautiful aroma. This one, the Nelson's a lot stronger, of course, because I didn't actually use Nelson in this. But this one's Nelson, Mosaic and Citra. The Nelson's really taken over. Maybe my Citra's getting on the... the Citra's there, but a bit of Mosaic, but the Nelson's really up front. And this one's a mix. There was Centennial, Cascade, Amarillo, that new Hort 4337, is it? Which is kind of like Rawaka, the diesel hop. And there's a couple other things I can list it down the bottom. This was also kegged, sort of traditional, I guess, out of a normal fermenter, just into a keg, through a hose down to the bottom of the keg. It was then, the keg was purged, and I rock and rolled this one for 3 minutes at 30 psi. Where this one was complete and closed transfer, and it was force carbed, but I had it on about 32-ish PSI for 24 hours. Excuse me, I should have turned that fan off on the font. That's what that noise was. Now the fridge is on. But they're both actually solid beers. You do have to be careful with them because they're both fairly strong. This one fermented down to about 12. This one was a little bit higher, 13, 14. I wanted it to finish at about 15, 16, but I think all the troubles I had with flow in the mash just didn't quite go as planned. It wasn't as warm as I wanted it to. I probably should have used rice hulls. But the flow went really well in this one, so I thought that would go in this one, and I didn't have rice hulls anyway. But in the end, as you saw in the video, the flow didn't go very well at all. So I probably had a little bit of issues keeping up that 69 degrees. You can probably go even higher for a mash temp to get a nice thick body. Still a very nice beer. I haven't got a JEDI juice here to compare with, unfortunately. The local shop doesn't have any. Dan's doesn't have any. So it is what it is. Even if you considered it not a JEDI, which is very, very close, it's definitely like a Hop Nation beer. Whether it be, you know, a lot of their, without not dissing them, but a lot of their IPAs and different NIPAs are fairly similar. But that's a good thing, you know. So there we go. I'm very happy with them, to be honest. Both of them. But you can see how this has darkened up. It has got a little bit of, like a little bit of light dry malt in it. Not much though. And it's probably darkened up from the bit of oxidation it's probably copped. Even though I was careful. But you can only be so careful, you know. This one stayed nice and light, hazy, like it should be. As I was saying, you do have to be careful. Like if I have a couple of these while cooking dinner, I get very excited and want a few more. It's very, very easy to drink, and you end up enjoying it a bit too much on a school night. I think the extra work I did on the salts with this, a little bit of extra salt, has made a difference to the mouthfeel. I still think that if it had finished a bit higher, it would have been a little bit better. So if you do want to see the original fail video, you can join my Patreon. It'd be very, very much appreciated. It really helps me out. The other thing I'd like to mention is a lot of people, and it's been a few I've seen, have bought a Robobrew or a Grainfather or whatever, a Brewzilla, and they've tried to do this as their first brew and they've run into some issues. It was a hard work brew. It's just a sparge really, and being very careful about oxidation, even anywhere in the process really. So don't get down if it hasn't worked out exactly like this. You saw exactly what I did on the video. There's no, you didn't miss anything. So if you did try it as your first brew, don't be put off. It was a big mammoth brew for a first brew. Maybe a good thing to do would be just a pale ale. Just use some ale malt, maybe a little bit of Munich. And you can still hop it like this, hop it exactly the same. It just won't be so light in colour, have a touch more sweetness. It'd be very, very good. The other thing I'll mention too with these is the first 3 or 4 days, I was, taste testing every day, really excited, tasting. By about 4 days in, I couldn't taste it anymore. I'd pour one and go, there's no hops there. But if you have a day off, or you have something in between, you'll soon realise the hops are still there. It's a bit of a taste bud wrecker for a little while. It's just what happens. Also, people ask sometimes, they said, it's really, really bitter. That can be that maybe you didn't cold crash long enough. to get all that yeast out, because you don't want the yeast in there. It doesn't matter if it's cloudy, you don't want the yeast in there. The yeast can carry a lot of bitterness. And if you haven't cleared all the hop matter out, or if it hasn't cleared, you know, by itself, give it a good cold crash, 3 days or something. Even in the keg, the little hop particulate can fall right down to the bottom, and so when you pour a glass, even though you can't see it, it can be very bitter from the hop particulate. Hop particulate. The bits of hop. And even if it is, you know, maybe in a few days, that bit will clear and you'll get a nice beer at the end. I'll try and let these warm up a bit. They're both great. Sometimes to me, because I'm not a huge Nelson fan, I'm going to be totally honest, I'm not a fan of that white wine thing that Nelson throws, and it really does. That's what I taste when I have a Nelson in a lot of things. Sometimes that's all I get. But, you know, that's been pretty critical. Anyway, cheers. I hope it works out for you. If you have any issues, let me know. Rice hulls, and watch that wheat. The wheat's a real pain. Even home brew shops, I heard someone got one milled at a home brew shop the other day and they never got anywhere near the efficiency. And it's probably the wheat isn't crushed. The wheat can be very small, as you saw in the video. Well, you might not have, that might have been in the first video, but it can be a very smaller grain compared to the, or a very small grain compared to the other malts you might use, especially if you're using an ale malt. Anyway, that's about it. Not much else I can say. If something actually has gone wrong and it is too bitter, don't be afraid of blending. Even if it's a commercial beer, or you know, you probably can't see me pouring it here. I've got my amber ale on tap. And you just mix it in with something else. Oh, there's a hoppy red now. And it goes awesome. Hang on, these were the ones I put aside at the start to warm up a bit, I forgot. Poured these earlier just so they were warm. And as you can see, as they've warmed, this one's got a lot clearer. You can see it more in this glass. And you can see the colour better. See how it looks really dark in that thicker glass? I'm glad I found these now. But there you go, you can see that one's heaps cloudier, this one's cleared up a lot. And it's not quite as dark as it looks in that other glass. And I think that's just a camera and light thing, because to me here they look the same, but there on the camera it just looks darker. Cheers.